That sounds fine.
Hello, this
Uh,
is Elizabeth Clare Brewington, and we are on a video podcast tour. And I am here with an author who is very concerned about what things are happening in America. And so I thought that his book would be fitting to talk about on this tour as we celebrate 160 years for Juneteenth and 250 years for America. So over to you, Dr. David. Share your story with our audience.
Well, I have lived all over the United States, and I came from a military family. I came from a very modest upbringing. My dad was enlisted in the military, which is not a lot of income, and so I had a really early interest for some reason in politics and how things work in America. And I didn't have a chance in my earlier life to do much about that. Although I did run for office twice during the 1990s and did not get elected either time. It was fairly a brutal experience. And so it was kind of interesting to go through that. But I managed to work my way through some challenging economic times by uh, pursuing education. And I worked very hard in high school, won a scholarship to an Ivy League college. And then from there, I had my own business in college and just kind of fell into that. I'm actually working on a book about that called A Cheap Education. But in the meantime, because I had a business, the MBA program at the University of Virginia recruited me, and a very aggressive program, a full-time 2-year program on the beautiful grounds of the University of Virginia. And then for some reason, I kind of took a wrong turn and went to law school from there. And and I went down to the University of Houston and got my law degree. And I then embarked on a corporate career and then went into private practice. And about 25 years out, I said, it's time for me to take a different turn. And I went back and got my PhD and have been primarily pursuing education full time. But the discipline of working in um, through my PhD actually helped in a way because it helped me to uh, get the skills that I needed to do the research for my for both of my books. And I was always fascinated by the fact that I think America is a successful country because of its people, but unfortunately not necessarily because of its leadership, at least during the last 100 years roughly. And I decided to pick the period from Woodrow Wilson to the present because that's kind of the American empire. We unequivocally won World War One. The Europe was not able to get itself out of World War One until America came in and fixed it. And so from about the end of World War One to the present, it's been the American empire. So that was kind of the source of my book. And so I looked at the American presidents. We tried to make the book as nonpartisan as possible to provide both sides of information about the different presidents, from Wilson. The book does end at Obama because the book was published in 1988. I'm sorry, 2018. I get my years mixed up there occasionally. And it doesn't cover Biden and Trump. And so we're actually have plans to do not to add on to the book, not to re-release that book, but to do a slightly different approach, incorporating the material from the first book into a new book that'll probably be called American Report Card. And I actually had a publisher's agent and I were talking earlier this morning, and we did not uh, I'm not ready to do that because I'd like to see a little bit more of what the second Trump administration does before we go to print on the subsequent book, which would incorporate Wilson through Trump, including both of his administrations. So that's a little bit about what we worked on there. And then following that, and I called it area political management, not political science, not poli-sci as we say in higher ed, but political management because I'm not a poli-sci person. I'm a management and legal person. So I have a little bit different take on things than perhaps some other people do. And I was wandering around thinking about how dysfunctional the U.S. Congress is. And I said, I need to do this second book on the U.S. Congress. And I came up with an idea. I can't tell you where it came from because I'm not a gambler. I don't play cards. In fact, to do the book, I had to go out and buy a deck of cards to study it to format the book Bad Deal for America, but it's a play on, playing cards. And
Yes.
it features 26 Democrats and 26 Republicans, but it's not it's each one is very short. It's about a page and a half to 2 pages on each politician that we feature, but we feature them because they've said such utterly stupid and nonsensical things. And I just want to say the book came out in 2022. Not a single person quoted in the book, or a relative or PR person, has ever contacted me and said, Dr. Day, you misquoted me on this date, because we put the dates and we
Yes.
include all the citations. So it was pretty funny uh, to do that. The most fun that I had with Bad Deal for America was actually doing the audiobook. And so what I did is, a lot of authors read their own book, which is fine. And but given the nature of Bad Deal for America, where it's quoting all these other politicians, I read the introduction, which talks about how much money members of Congress actually get. So it's not just their salary, they get allowances for their staff, they get allowances, and unbelievable, they get $250,000 every time they start a new term, not when they leave and come back or when they first come to Congress, but every 2 years in Congress, they can spend $250,000 on new furniture. Add
Wow,
taxpayer.
didn't know that. Yeah. So hold that thought. So the book is available everywhere, and it poises a great discussion for our celebration of America 250. And I am going to end this interview, but I'll bring Elton on because he also ran for Congress. So you guys can have a great conversation with the second follow-up interview. So thank you for watching Discover Brightside, and I'm so excited to have Dr. David in the studio with us today on a very important topic. So, do you think that there is a bad deal for America? Write us a comment. Tell us what you think about the interview and tell us what you think about what's going on. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching.